Hey, welcome to Scratching the Surface. I'm Jarrett Fuller, and this is a podcast about education and inquiry. Today on the show, I am joined by the designer, educator, photographer, and artist, Margo Halverson. Margo is a professor and the chair of the graphic design department at Maine College of Art and is the co-founder of DesignInquiry, a sort of amorphous collective that's been mentioned on the show a few times before. Most recently, I think, in the conversations with Mary Bannis and Lucy Hitchcock, that is kind of centered around ideas of disciplinary discourse, expanded practice, and design research. In this episode, Margo and I talk about design inquiry, and we talk about the sort of, I describe it as these kind of utopian ideals where they are really interested in getting people together on this remote island up in Maine to live and work together for a week around specific themes or topics or issues related to design practice. We also talk about her background as a photographer and how her interest in books and typesetting led her into a career as a graphic designer. We talk about why she loves teaching and how her personal and professional work start to intersect and interact. This is a really great conversation, one that I found really inspiring and uplifting. I find the mission of DesignInquiry so aligned to my interest with this podcast in many ways, and I feel that they are actually putting these ideas into practice. So it was so great to learn about how they think about doing that. If you're a fan of the podcast and want to help support it, you can become a member for $5 a month or $50 a year. Members get an exclusive monthly newsletter that features behind-the-scenes content, links and articles from former guests about design and writing and criticism, as well as previews of the upcoming episodes. Scratching the Surface is fully supported through these memberships. So if you like the show, if you want to see it continue, if you want to help with its ongoing production, I hope that you would consider joining. And enjoy this episode with Margo Halverson. You originally studied photography. Did you get your MFA in photography also?
Yes, I did.
So where did that interest come from, or what was it about photography that kind of got you excited when you were a teenager thinking about college?
Well, I thought I was going to be an art major, typical
Mm-hmm.
painting, printmaking. And then I realized when I took my first photography class, in order to document my paintings, I liked photography much better. I had Carson Graves was there at Arizona State. And then I taught as kind of an assistant at Maine Photographic Workshops at the time, which is interesting. I'm back in Maine from Arizona. But I was that kid in high school that had, a Instamatic camera with the flash cubes at all times in my locker, photographing like random hallway, whatever. I like to document. I'm just, it's obviously from my work and it's come around again, but I'm always photographing, and I'm not sure if that's out of a fear of losing something or simply a fear of, or not a fear, but a moment of observing, or it's just habit. I don't think it's a nervous tick. I'm interested in just looking, watching, and that's never, ever gone away. And so when I found photography in my undergrad at Arizona State, I just that's it. I'm done. I'm in.
And did you have a sense of, this is going to sound really reductive and I apologize, but did you have a sense of a career of what it meant to be a photographer, of what kind of life you wanted as a photographer? You know what I mean?
Yes, I knew that I did not want to be a commercial photographer.
Okay. Yeah.
I did not want to work with studio setups and lighting. And so I knew I wanted to be a fine art photographer. And then towards the end of my undergrad, I started making books, limited edition, hand bound, tipped in cyanotypes or Van Dycks or gum bichromate prints. And then that led me to letterpress printing. And so I was doing some letterpress printing in undergrad with John Rousseau at Arizona State. And then took, I think, maybe a year off, went back to grad school with this idea of bookmaking specifically. And then ended up as you do, things change. Working in 4x5, black and white, but I documented my hometown in North Dakota. I grew up in this
Mm.
town of 150 in
Oh,
North
wow.
Dakota, in Red River Valley, and I thought this is when you're young, you leave college, you think where you grew up, you realize it was a special place, and not everybody had the life I did.
Hmm.
Coming from a
Hmm.
graduating class of 41 to at the time, Arizona State of at that time, about 46,000 people.
Mm.
And my town could have fit in my Psych 101 class like 5 times over.
Right.
I thought, oh, this is a project. So
Interesting.
I concentrated on bookmaking, 4x5 in my master's work.
I could easily spend this whole conversation talking to you about photography. This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure I've ever actually like talked about this on the podcast before, but I actually was interested in photography before I was interested in
Mm.
graphic design. I got interested in
Mhm.
graphic design when I was about 14 or 15 years old. This was the early 2000s, and so this was kind of right at the height of the kind of immigrant era, and this was right
Mhm.
when Design Observer and blogs were starting. And I grew up in a suburban town in Pennsylvania where I had never met a graphic designer before, and somehow I stumbled upon these blogs and just completely was like, "Oh, this is this is it for me. This is everything that I'm interested in." But right before that moment, my parents had gotten their first digital camera, and
Mhm.
it was like a like 3 megapixel like Kodak, and I just completely like took that over from the family.
Mhm.
Um, as a 13-year-old, and took photographs all the time, kind of like what you were talking about, just documenting things. And I was not
Right.
um this was not like with my friends or with family even. It was just like, a tree, this building. It was like a um snapshots of
Sure.
just the world.
Yeah.
And I still do that, and I still always have a camera with me, and photography has been this hobby that is now going on 20 years old, that only in the last couple of years I've started to kind of think about seriously of, why do I do this? Where does this come from? I never once thought about making it a career. I knew I
Mhm.
wasn't interested in commercial photography or portraits or anything like that. It was always just this kind of thing that was happening on the side. And as I reflect back, I think about it as another gateway for me into graphic design and thinking about
Mhm.
imagery and communication. And it sounds like it was actually kind of similar for you, that from photography you were making these books and letterpress. It sounds like we're in design at that point, right?
Yes, exactly. And I have a funny story about that. So
Okay.
when let me think. So then I graduated with an MFA, and I was teaching photography at Scottsdale Community College, and I went
Mm,
to a Friends of Photography workshop in California. And I had my, light impressions portfolio box of all my books, and
mhm,
um, I met Katie Homans, who is
mm,
She's Katie Homans, book
mhm,
designer, but she was there reviewing photography. Um,
mm,
I'm not sure why she was there. Maybe it was the topic was book design. And I showed her my, hand bound cloth, letterpress stamped, my books. And we had a really wonderful conversation. And I said to her, she said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, a couple things. I want to teach, but
mm,
I also want to do this. I want to make books like this, but for other people.
mhm.
Um, I want to not use my own photography and not use my own words." And I'll never forget, she shut my portfolio case and she said, "Well, that's called graphic design." And
Right.
I said, "Really?" And she said, "You're in Arizona, right?" And I said, "Yeah, and I'm teaching at a community college." She said, "Well, Rob Roy Kelly teaches at Arizona
Mm,
State." And
mhm,
she said, "Go talk to Rob and learn about graphic design." And So
Wow.
that's what I did. I talked to Rob, and I had my light impressions box and said, I want to learn about rubylith and stuff. I don't know
Hmm.
what I want to learn, but I want to learn. Of course, I'd had my MFA, and I thought, I don't need to take more classes in art. I just tell me how to make this. It's not how to get words on a page and images on a page.
Hmm.
And he said, well, what are you doing during the day? Uh, I said, well, I'm working on my work. I'm teaching night classes. He said, okay, take our program for the next 3 years, and you'll learn about theory, you'll learn about form, you'll learn about what design is and can be.
Mm.
And at
So
that time,
did
I shrugged and said, okay.
and so you went through that program then with him.
Yes, I did. Yep.
Can I have two questions about that, which I think I love that story, by the way.
Hmm. I know.
um,
It still cracks me up to this day. So with my students, I'm just like, you just throw down one question and to the right
yeah,
person, and there you go.
yeah. When she said that's graphic design, you want to be a graphic designer, was that a term you had heard before?
No,
What
not
was your
really.
relationship to it? Okay.
No, this is I'm happy to date myself, but this is like the late '80s,
Okay.
and so this was I might have had a Mac Lisa,
Oh,
or
nice. Yeah.
something brother or something, but no, this was not. I didn't know what it was. Oh well, no, that's not true. That's not true. Sorry, I'm forgetting. Scratch
Okay.
that. It was we had a graphic design program at Arizona State.
Mm,
And I remember I published a book of these photographs from my hometown. But I had a friend who was in the graphic design program.
mm,
I totally forgot. She laid out the book, and when she laid it out, she said, how do you want it? Or we talked about it as you do. And I said, I don't know. I don't know anything about this. Just make it look like there's a white mat around every photograph. That's all I know.
yeah.
And I have another funny story. I went to John Rousseau and I said, I want to help me pick a typeface. She asked me what typeface. And he said, do you want a serif or a sans serif? And I said, oh, I don't know what you mean. Is there anything in between? And he said, Optima.
Yeah, right. That's what I was gonna say.
Oh my God, my book is used
So
Optima.
it
So I
did use
have her.
Optima?
I did.
I
Yep.
love that. I
I
love
love
that.
it too. And when I came here to interview for my Maine College of Art job, I had to say, I had to tell the story about Optima, just so I wasn't too busted.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So then you meet with Rob and you end up going through that program. Was that like, yeah, this is what I've wanted to do. This actually is I am like making books for other people and not using my own imagery. Did it all kind of make sense to you and feel right?
Yes, it did. The typography and the letter form design felt right.
Mm,
Because we were, it's still a program that was kind of a Basel descendant.
okay. Yeah.
So I had my ruling pen and plaka and worked on a uppercase R for 4 months,
Right.
whatever. And I loved all of that. I loved the typography and the letter form design, but I knew I was not good at or interested in at the time. It was any kind of imagery was kind of a bit of a West Coast
Mm, mm-hmm.
Jim Cross kind of you marry these two, images together and they make the third thing.
Oh,
And it
right,
was
right.
getting a little bit illustrative.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really understand that or want to go into that. I really liked strict kind of information,
Mm,
editorial organization. I mean, but this is still stat camera,
right, right.
but then what I would do is make my posters with the cast offs in the box next to the stat camera that everybody left.
Yeah.
That to me was photography and how to use the machine. So I came from this other art kind of background, kind of the what if background, not the what
Mm-hmm.
is, and this is the right way, which was still a little bit of that. Well, okay, a lot.
Can you talk more about that? Because that literally was what my next question was going to be, kind of coming from this more fine art background.
Right.
And I admit to not knowing too much about what design programs were like or kind of how they were structured at
Uh-huh.
that time, but I imagine that they were much more commercial driven.
Right.
How did those sync up for you? Were you able to kind of keep both sides, that kind of fine art and also the this has to do something?
I had to keep them really separated,
Mm.
and that didn't feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And even after I graduated, actually, I didn't graduate. I couldn't get a second BFA from the same institution. So
Oh,
I kind of love that I have no degree in graphic design.
right.
I went through the program. I sat for the registrar, and she said, "No, I can't do that. You have to take some more science classes for a BS." And I said, talk about BS. I'm
I was
out
going
to,
to say, in all the research I had done, I didn't see anywhere that you had studied graphic design. So I was like, how
yeah,
did I miss this? That's
I
why.
know. I know, exactly. I did it. It's just kind of secret.
Right.
So
That's
at
great.
the time then I worked in Phoenix for a while at a design studio. It was more of a design studio, I think, than an ad agency. And I wanted to learn about the business, the parts that you
Mm-hmm.
don't get in school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to teach at Arizona State. And I had a job that was sort of half in photography and half in graphic design. And I taught the workshop that was professional work.
Mm.
Um, and it was okay. I liked it. It all was fine, but then I was still trying to figure out where is my work in this.
Right.
And so I started to apply for other jobs outside of. I didn't want to teach at a university. I wanted to teach at an art school. I wanted to teach somewhere where that I could continue to
Mm.
build um, these bridges, and hence Maine College of Art. And this was
So
in 1990.
I wanna go back. I have like tons of questions around teaching for you, but I wanna go back to two things that you said earlier, just to kind of connect it to the teaching, because you had mentioned when you were studying photography that you were teaching a couple like photo workshops or something, and then
Mhm,
after your MFA or during your MFA, then you were teaching
mhm,
photography then, and then you
right.
told Rob Roy Kelly that you wanted to teach, and so teaching sounds like it was also an interest of yours from the beginning. Where did that interest come from, or what was it about teaching that was interesting to you?
Well, somebody said this one time. I don't remember who. And early on was when you teach, you get to talk about the thing you love all the time, right? And I
Right.
was
Yeah.
just that it has always stuck with me. And I thought that I was going to be teaching photography, and
Mm.
then I found this other thing that seemed to encompass photography, and it's much broader. And it's all of a sudden now it's words on a page and language and photography and images and sequence. And it just was like, oh my God, I've hit, the jackpot. The circus is all right there with graphic design. So I thought I want to teach that. I get to talk about it all day.
I love that. That
Yeah.
I've never heard that before, but that's exactly when I started teaching. I started teaching at this weird kind of crossroads. It was while I was in grad school, and it was this kind of weird
Mhm.
crossroads of kind of wondering if I even still wanted to be a designer, or and trying to figure out what it was about design that I was interested in. And I had the privilege of Micah letting me teach a class in the undergrad program while I was a graduate student, and it completely made me fall in love with design all
Mhm.
over again. That's exactly why, because like being able to just talk about it in this setting uh, with a bunch of people is like actually the thing that I really like. And so I love that. I've never heard that before, but I love that. I love that definition of teaching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it works.
Can I want to? This is kind of jumping around a little bit, but I want
Mhm.
to. I asked you earlier about that kind of the balance or the intersection between the kind of personal work or the fine art work or kind of finding you in the work
Mhm. Mhm.
with the kind of commercial demands. And it sounds like teaching was a way that you could kind of have both of those a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And something that struck me about looking at your work, looking at your website, your personal website, especially, where it's just this kind of collage of photos and writing and all of it kind of just like blending together and interacting with
Mm-hmm.
each other, that now you seem like somebody that has a robust teaching practice, commercial practice, and personal practice. And they all seem both independent, but it also seems like they're influencing each other. And I'm curious kind of how you think about that today, now that you've had 30 years of
Mm-hmm.
teaching,
Mm-hmm.
30 years of professional practice, and this kind of other more fine art work. How do these all talk to each other for you?
Well, they totally feed each other on the levels of, the soul,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the finances, as well as the time management.
Yeah.
So we have whatever, all the layers of, I was going to say hell, but all those layers kind of can come together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, they've kind of seesawed, this
Mm-hmm.
would be this would be a project, a nice little graph to make of these questions.
Mm.
Um, the I think they're all about learning how to ask the right question.
Mm.
Always, as you were talking, and I'm thinking about teaching, and I'm thinking about how, even sitting down with a student who can't decide what to major in, for example, I
Mm-hmm.
can see their work in graphic design and I can see their work in whatever, photography, illustration. And I tell them, it's not about what decision are you going to make. It's how are you going to ask yourself the right question to help yourself with the decision.
Hmm.
I think every project is like that. Every student project is how to reframe the question.
Right.
The question is not how to design a poster, but it's what is the, you reframe the question. And I think I do that constantly with my own work. Um, and I was
Yeah.
just thinking, even in this time of transition, as I'm in, I have a sabbatical this semester. The
Hmm.
Futurespective Design Inquiry exhibition just came down yesterday, and that's been a 2.5 year project
Right.
/ 20 year. And
Mm-hmm.
then, um, um, how do you blend all of these? I think I learned the most one moment. Actually, I was still in Arizona, and I had a teacher, a graphic design teacher, saying, "I want you to make graphic design about your work." And I honestly could not blend them. And then I had a realization, why? Why do they have to be? Who cares? Just stay busy and engaged and love it. And which is actually a new mantra for my teaching too, is like, you have to love your work at the end.
Right.
You have to
Right.
love it. You have to want to put it on the fridge with a magnet,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
show your
Exactly.
friends. Or I think I've lost your question now.
No, no. I mean, you're still kind of on the thread that I was thinking about, which is
Mhm.
how, if at all, do these different practices interact with each other or talk to each other or influence each other. And I'm asking the question, purely selfishly, as someone who
Right.
seems to be constantly busy with teaching and
Mhm.
and kind of client work, that I feel like that kind of personal work, or the more kind of fine art, conceptual, whatever you want to call it, that design work has taken a back seat for the last couple of years, and I'm trying to bring that back. And how do all of those things, can they all live separately, or how do they influence each other? It's just something that's on my mind, and you're someone who
Right.
seems like you're doing all of them all the time. I kind of want to know
Yeah.
how you do it.
And I think I'm doing them all the time because I don't ask that question anymore.
Right.
I don't care. I totally now trust that what gets done is where I'm at, where my influences are, and my curiosity is, and where you spend your time is what you're interested in.
Yeah.
And that's just enough for me to trust that.
Can I ask the question in a different way, or maybe it's a kind of sub question? Um, thinking about your own background and thinking about this personal fine art with the commercial. And I don't mean to keep making these delineations sound so
Mhm.
strict,
Mhm.
but that's something that I run into with my own students a lot, where I'm always encouraging students to kind of bring more of themselves in, more of their background, more of their stories into the work.
Mhm.
And there's always a group of students who are very resistant to that because they think that it will somehow prevent them from getting a job, that
Right.
everything needs to be commercial, everything needs to be polished, everything needs to be branded and packaged
Right.
for the portfolio because they are thinking about what comes next. And I don't know how to balance that in the classroom, because I get it and I know that they're spending a lot of money. I spent a lot of money to go to school at, hoping to get a job. How do you think about that with your students, or how do you kind of talk about that in the classroom as students are kind of thinking about these things?
Well, I tell them they're getting hired for number one, who you are when you sit down in the
Mm,
chair and what do you give,
mm-hmm.
in terms of your personality and how giving are you of your talents around a table.
Right.
But I also tell them that, and what we blend all of these projects, and in possibly not my most the moments I'm not the most proud of, I'll tell them you can learn about line length and kerning and um, how to build a really beautiful margin width. Take Coursera, to do
Yeah.
something else, but
Yeah.
you're paying a tuition so that I can help you find what your relationship with form is
Right.
and how do you express ideas. At the same time, given my, modernist, with lineage,
Mm-hmm.
I understand the quality of good composition and form. I teach at Maine College of Art 2D design, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
All majors, or they haven't even majored yet, and that's basic figure ground and color theory, and I love it. I
And
love,
that's
love, love it.
like a freshman kind of foundation
Yeah,
class. Okay.
totally.
Yeah.
And I really like that, but I'm constantly saying why this is important as well.
Right.
Why they need to learn this. Because it's a required class, it's not always their favorite, but we try to make it their favorite.
Yeah.
Then I teach the 101 and 102 Intro to Typography and Intro to Design. And those classes, mostly what I focus on is what can graphic design be? And even
Mm.
these days, I talk to them about, in 4 years, the software is going to be different.
Right.
But what we're going to try to learn is how to think.
Right.
Again, how to ask the right questions so that you can make the tools, which is the process, to get you someplace that is going to inspire somebody to care about what you've put in front of them.
Right.
That's your job.
Right.
That's it. And so I really love our student population. We're kind of rough and tumble here at Mecca,
Mm.
and they
Okay.
are they're with me, and I talk to them from day one about how do you take advantage of an art school, you
Mm.
know. But then when you get the seniors and all they do want to do is maybe bind books and print and make printmaking,
Mm-hmm.
then we look at their full portfolio and say, okay, so what kind of work do you want to do, and how do you maybe need to, you know, emphasize?
Right.
Don't use doing it, just repackage.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got to stay alive. Nobody wants that if it's not.
Right. Yeah, I like that. That is actually a nice way to kind of connect it to Design Inquiry a little bit about,
Hmm.
kind of teaching how to think, or thinking about how to think
Right.
as a designer. And Design Inquiry is obviously a big part of what I wanted to talk to you about.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to ask you a question that's a horrible question to
I
start.
can take it.
Because I read the essay that Lucy posted on Design Observer, that Design Observer published about Design Inquiry, and they opened the piece saying if you ask 5 people what Design Inquiry is, you're going to get 5 different answers. And in an interview that Stephen Heller did, I think with you, about, or I guess it was unnamed. He did it just with DesignInquiry.
Mm-hmm.
He referred to it as a think tank, which I thought was interesting, and
Right.
you kind of push back on that a little bit. Um, and I have some sense of what it is, but I can't really put that into words. And so my question is, what is DesignInquiry?
I know. We love that you can't put it into words. So that's one answer.
Okay. Okay.
Whoever shows up, that's what it becomes. However, I can get a little more specific than that. It's a gathering of like minds to
Mm-hmm.
do work around a particular topic that we being now we're a 501c3
Right.
um, since I think around 2004 or 5, I can't remember. Um, we do work that we figure is kind of urgent and timely.
Mm-hmm.
But they're really broad, open topics. And so people bring what they want to it and they use the other participants, anywhere from 12 to 24, who live together, work together, cook together, flat hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like we're in that hallway at the hotel having the best conversation, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
After, um, and so people come together to, I think, I really think it's mostly about like minds because it's not easy
Mm.
to go to an island off the coast of Maine to get there to say, oh, sure, I'll stay a week in a barn making work with no internet with people I don't even know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what it is. It's jumping off a cliff, taking a risk, probably because you're looking for something. But then we also kind of build the stage so that people can give as much as they get.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I really defined it, except that we've called it a working symposium, a
Right.
hands-on think tank. Um, we're not AIGA. We are a flexible group of collaborators interested in sharing our expertise and getting back from others. It's an equal exchange.
Right.
Well,
Right.
one of our topics was no quo, unequal exchange. We investigated that topic. That was interesting.
Can yeah, I feel like something like that and like you're describing can either be something that's really successful
Hmm.
and I don't mean successful in um produces a lot of great work, makes a lot of money, famous, whatever, but I mean successful in fostering conversation, bringing people together. People leave feeling like they have more than when they arrived.
Right.
Um, or it could just go completely off the rails because it's so open, because it's all these different people coming together to this island that has no internet. Um, and there's something interesting that's happening in that it didn't go that way, that it did really become this, forgive the word, magical time for the people
Right.
who have been there. And I have not been to one, but everyone I've talked to have been, just speaks so highly and
Mhm.
how transformative that time was. Can you talk about? I guess I want to try to understand how you kind of were able to pull that off. Can you talk about how it started and kind of where even the idea for something like this came from?
Sure. Sure. I'll get back to that. But as you're talking, I'm thinking it takes a lot of practice to make that happen.
Mm,
The outcomes are magical. The outcomes being the connections, the work, the mind exploding,
hmm
didn't know I could do this
hmm
kind of work happens. But um, it's by design. And we even have secretly, only not so secret anymore, we being the board and people who have been on the board, we take turns being the framers of each program. And we're always cautious of what we call Tuesday Freakout Day.
mm,
It's Freakout Day. Tuesday's a day everybody says, well, what are we doing? Why am I here? And I can't believe and we know exactly what to do.
right.
We know exactly that by Wednesday noon, this is all going to shift. We don't tell them that, people that, of course, is
hmm
we're like, we're Tuesday Freakout Day. So we really set the stage for these things to happen, which takes a lot of work and experience. We're now in our uh, let's see. We had the first program was 2004 here in Portland, Maine. Two of them used to be connected to Maine College of Art, but previous to that, when I moved from Arizona to Portland, Maine, I took the job teaching graphic design, but I also took the job because they wanted me, as part of this hire, to have this summer institute of graphic design. And that's because they had already connected with Rudy DeHerrick, Jim Cross, and Bruno Manguzzi for the first summer.
Okay.
And they each taught a week, and it was very teacher student. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that, because I was kind of freaking out, like, oh my God, I'm leaving, Phoenix, LA, all of my connections, and going to Portland, Maine. If I build this program, then I get to have, what is it, the term, the mountain come to me instead of going to the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said, sure, okay, I'll do that. And then after the first year, I said, however, I want to invite my own faculty. We can't have, we need some, I want to invite. And between the time of Arizona State and Maine College of Art, I did the Brissago program in Brissago, Switzerland. It's the Yale program. Again, because I probably felt like I had an imposter syndrome or something, but I need some more Yale kind of education. I don't know. But there I met Wolfgang Weingart. He came 7 years to the Summer Institute, as well as Dorothea Hoffman 2 or 3 times. We had quite a roster, and I think they're on our internet, of people that would come teach a week. And so it would be 3 weeks together, in a row,
right.
And different faculty each week and students from around the country. I wanted to build this professional program. Professionals could come and play with color with Deborah Sussman, who had just done the Olympics.
Yeah.
I mean, how fun is that?
Yeah. I think I saw. I think I saw when I was looking at this page. I know what you're talking about. I think I saw that one of the last years it was like Michael Rock and Susan Sellers, Elliot Earls,
right,
and Ellen Lupton. I think all in the same summer.
Oh yeah, Lorraine Wild was there.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
Rick Valcenti. They were all there 1 year.
Yeah, I was like, that's like all the people that have influenced me the most in one summer.
They were all there together. We were joking like, oh my God, what if this building blew up? There goes design. Like, period. Yeah. So they were part of our transition group. So I had Weingart for like 7 years, that program, and then the best moments would be at the weekend at our house at dinner time when they'd overlap, these faculty. And I said, and Melle Hammer was one of our last faculty members the last couple of years, and he's from Amsterdam, and his teaching just blew my mind. I could finally, Weingart was kind of like the Sears store, the anchor at the mall. If Weingart would agree to come next year, then I would build the program around that.
Right.
He was, mixing him with CalArts, Cranbrook, Dutch.
Yeah.
I had to. That's another podcast. So
okay.
Moving ahead, Weingart stopped coming, so I turned my sights to the Netherlands, and because my husband during this time went to Yale grad school.
Okay.
And I met Carl Martens, who was one of his teachers.
Yeah.
I was just, the spouse trying to poach people for the summer, my little summer program up here in Maine. But Carl couldn't come. He sent me to Vicar Burma.
Okay.
And then I had Oosterhoff, and then I met Melle Hammer. And then Melle, here the last couple of years, and then he was here the 10th year of the Maine Summer Institute. The one that had, I think Elliot was there. Anyway, remember standing in my kitchen holding a big, bouquet of kale from the garden. I think, of course, I was in tears saying, I can't do this anymore. People are coming to study with these amazing people, and they don't even know who they are. They just want college credit. I'm done. I'm done being a continuing ed administrator. Even though I get a lot out of it, I I wanted to build something else. And I also knew that I had an amazing group of friends and colleagues that believed in this program or what it can be.
Right.
But I was still connected with Maine College of Art, and it's like, wait, could we take this? Could I take this out? Could we? And Mela had the idea of we need to live together and cook together.
Yeah,
And
I love
cooking
that
is a
part.
really
Yeah.
important part. And I said, I want it to be that weekend at my house, for a week.
Mm-hmm.
So we brainstormed and changed Maine Summer Institute into DesignInquiry, which, if I remember, was on. And I think Peter Hall and I might have different stories on this, but what I do remember, 1/3 of the story is on the phone in my kitchen. The phone being the kind with the curly cord hooked to the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Talking to Paul Elliman,
Okay.
who was also a teacher of Charles's at Yale. So I got to know him and his family. And just kind of like, what do you think about this kind of a program? And where's the buy-in? And, Mela came one time and we just went to New York and we met with everybody we could and tried to figure out, how important? They helped us define what this could be in our sort of original mission statement. And Paul said, we're describing this to him in the most complicated way as it is. And he said, oh, you mean like an inquiry? It's just an inquiry.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
Mela hung up the phone. Mela, inquiry, design inquiry. So that's my memory of it, how so a lot of people were involved at the beginning. And then we wanted to take it out of Portland, and the college was going through some changes with the president, etc. And of course, they were interested in us making some money, and I was getting paid to administer. And Mel and I both were. We had 2 of them here in Portland, and then we said, I went to the president and said, how about I take DesignInquiry away from, it's no longer affiliated with Maine College of Art. And they said, okay, which I was pleased and surprised.
Yeah.
And then now we had $0 to do anything. But I found this poor farm, literally, a poor farm on Vinyl Haven where some of our MFA students had just rented the space. And then I remember here, Doug Scott came up, Peter Hall, and Ron Bodding was one of our original board members, and he's an actor, and he was involved in our earlier ones here in Portland, where we really embraced and learned about improvisation in design and groups, and really improv has been a really important tenet in both of my teaching, professional work, and DesignInquiry. So it was off and running. And then because I wasn't affiliated with Maine College of Art anymore, DesignInquiry wasn't, I really felt like I could invite others to be part of this, part of the organization, really to be, they were really important. Natalia Ilian was really important.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Nancy Skolos. I had fantastic, wonderful, there's a list of people I'm forgetting that were really, really helpful with and supportive.
I find the I don't mean this word to sound derogatory in some way, the utopian ideals of its founding to be very inspiring. And even the way that you're talking about it now, a lot of those core ideas seem like they're still a part of what you're doing today. How has DesignInquiry changed over those 15 years, or have the goals changed, or the type of people? How do you maintain that kind of core utopian ideals that you're talking about with just changing people, changing culture, the design profession itself completely different? How has that changed DesignInquiry?
That's a really good question, and that's something that we always try to have our finger on.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, we are a board of 6. We've been a larger board, and people have kind of come and gone. I think on our website,
Mm-hmm.
is that history, but um, it was about in I don't know, four or so years ago. Um, really feeling like we needed to change it up because we could name Tuesday Freakout. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, wait,
Right. Yeah.
is this healthy?
Yeah.
We know what's going to happen. And Anita Cooney, she's the dean of design at Pratt, is on the board
Oh,
and
yeah.
has been really instrumental in the last few years. She's been there every year. And Emily Luce is our
Mm-hmm.
president and
Right.
has been for some time now. And she's really holding it down and moving it forward at the same time. Gail Swanland has been really
Mm-hmm.
instrumental as well in our thinking to get these, East and West Coast. But we are really, I think what's really important is that we are a trusting, collaborative, uh, empathetic group to the board members, to our personalities,
Mm-hmm.
as well as to what our talents are. Um, and so we are continually re-evaluating.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 or 5 years ago, we were at this sparrow farm, the big barn, and said, okay, it was too predictable.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the participants had a fantastic job, a fantastic time, and everything happened as it could and can, and it was inspiring and beautiful. But at the end, I know I felt like, okay, it's beginning to feel like the end of the Maine Summer Institute.
Mm-hmm.
I've done this. I can predict. I need to back away and let some new people take over. But because we had this big show coming up, we focused on that, and we downsized then and had a true residency, in just the Poor Farm. So I think 11 people
Mm-hmm.
came and just did their work. But then, of course, oh boy, I sure missed the interaction that happens with the show and tells, and the will you help me with this? And I need some thinking around that. And here, will you be in my, makeshift camera obscura that I'm shooting through cardboard in the basement window?
Yeah.
You know, so that did, so the point is we change it up, and as well as anything, change the form, make
Right.
the book totally different size and double the page count. Something's gonna happen. So it's the
Right.
same thing. We change the lockup, uh,
Right.
and see what happens. And we continue to meet amazing people that just keep showing up and willing to. We had 15 people at our install for the exhibition, which was a residency in improvisation in itself.
Mm.
Um, it's about the people. That's how it remains fresh. And then it's about the board having done this enough times to know what works and what doesn't. But
Right.
it's possible your question is, how do we keep that all fresh and alive? And we're at that transition.
Yeah. I
So I think we're going to have some new board members. Some of us are talking about that we want to form a different kind of collective that is a little bit more
mm,
project specific, and over a longer duration, maybe not in residence.
right.
So the trick is to take what we've learned and shift it, give it a huge elbow to the ribs.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Um, I have another question about that's might be kind of a weird question. Is it? I'm wondering, are there ways for people who maybe are unable to take the week and
Mm-hmm.
go do something like this, and are there ways to kind of have these experiences, whether they are communal, whether it is kind of like living outside of the grind of work, to kind of reflect on the making process. How can someone who maybe can't go to DesignInquiry for a week or have that time, are there ways to kind of get that feeling? You know what I mean? Or to kind of
Yeah,
have a
exactly.
similar experience?
Yeah. Yes, there are. And we have had design inquiries in Marfa, Texas, and Detroit, and Berlin, and BC, Canada, and Montreal. And so there are these others that happen. But we also know there's a certain, we always say we set the stage. That's our job
Mm,
as framers. And we know what those ingredients are. We even have what we call a recipe, which is like absolutely opposite of what we think of as design inquiry, a recipe.
yeah.
So we even our mission statement that we have printed out has all of our notes on the edge, of a Google Doc.
Oh yeah.
Those are included in our mission statement. It's always in process, but um, the key ingredients are, I guess, as Trisha Tracy and Arzu Axel talk about, is suspending judgment
Mm,
and showing up. Um,
mm-hmm.
but how you do, but another thing is that we've always learned is that we do our best work together, and together is often got to be in the same room.
Right.
There's something about washing dishes evening after evening, with maybe someone you haven't met before. And that's where the conversation happens and the connections and the questions happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about it's the work of in person that I think is important.
Yeah.
But there are certain things we know that can help make this happen. It's got to be hard to get to. You got to kind of not know what to expect,
Yeah.
suspend judgment. You have to come with something you want to find out and something you know that you have to offer, and be willing to be, as we say, on stage, in the wings, or in the audience at any given time.
Hmm. Mm.
So egos can stay at home.
Right.
But they usually do, because it's not easy to get to these, and we don't define what we are very well, which is on purpose.
Yeah. 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 That's interesting. I actually think that the fact that you've been able to kind of figure out the components of the recipe but keep it open like that
Mhm.
is a really interesting tension.
Mhm.
And I think speaks to the board, speaks to the goals, speaks to the people
Mhm.
that participate, that you've been able to kind of find that stage, but allow essentially anything to happen
Right.
on it, which
Right.
which I think is really admirable.
We do have this, what we call the not the schedule, and so people apply with an abstract of what they want to bring to the topic, why they want to come, things like that, and then we organize. Everyone does a quick introduction or presentation, specific to, again, the topic and their interest in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can't show student work or give any canned anything. It can be very improvised, but we set then kind of the rhythm of the week, kind of front loading with workshops and prompts, and these introductions. But then if you're, say, scheduled on Thursday, you probably will have changed everything by then.
Right.
I mean, it was interesting. 2 summers ago, our topic was rewrite. And the Vinyl Haven rewrite inquiry was very much about writing.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was kind of what we thought,
Yeah.
rewrite, and the topic was open. But then we had another one in the UK, in Devon, um, in August, and the rewrite topic became really about identity.
Mm.
Um, and so I was really taken how, oh yeah, that's right. It's really about the people that show up,
Yeah.
and forms a kind of a collective, zeitgeist around this topic. Um, so it's really just learning, maybe it gets back to the photography, right? Just noticing,
Yeah.
being ready for the moment,
Yeah.
and helping support that. That's really what it is.
Yeah, I love that. I also love how you brought this full circle, because I had one final question that kind of hopefully connects all of this, and you did a nice transition there with your answer also.
Okay, good. Yeah, I looked at the clock too.
You mentioned very early on that this conversation is happening at this transition. You're going on a sabbatical. The show just closed. I'm curious, at this point in your life, what are you thinking about now? What's next for you? What are the topics or issues or work that you're kind of excited about going forward?
Well, that's an interesting, loaded question. The question is on the tip of my tongue, and it reminds me of. I always show this image, an old engraving to my students of the donkey and the carrot, because do you know that one?
Yeah.
You know, the donkey and the carrot, because a lot of them haven't heard it. And I say, if you can define the carrot, it'll keep you moving. You know, just the way the donkey always thinks that stick holding the carrot is like, oh, there's a carrot. Here I go. I need to define the carrot. And I know that the carrot is built with experience of bringing to light ideas. I mean, that's what we do teaching, right? It's not art directing. It's trying to figure out how do you give that person a voice to bring to light an idea that will be different next week and next week and next week. So it's always about the role of the process. So I want to load the carrot, the sabbatical, with what is it I'm interested in? What are the skills that I have and still want to work with? I know that also DesignInquiry is shifting, and I want to pay a lot of attention to getting the next wave going, so that I can step away, as I think many of our board members are ready to. But it's already a loaded, wonderful thing that we can hand over.
Yeah.
So what's next is to define what's, to more specifically, I want to work in some time-based. I want to make some movies. I want to make some books that are probably mine. The last professional book I worked on was a Judy Glickman Lauder, Beyond the Shadows.
Oh, okay.
The Holocaust Danish Exception. Our Alice Design website hasn't been updated for 10 years yet. So.
Yeah, I noticed that. I wasn't going to talk about it. But.
Yeah, we are the cobbler's kids who have no shoes. But so this was an Aperture project, and it was really great. I want to continue to find those Katie Holman's. This is called graphic design projects that. Luckily, in our professional, it's been really interesting. We actually did a project with Katie Homans a few years ago, too. Everything came full circle in terms of doing artist catalogs and museum books for photographers.
Oh, wow.
So I got to do that. I've been doing that. So I have the goals, the hopes for DesignInquiry, and then whatever this offshoot thing can be, because selfishly, I need my people.
Right.
And I need my projects. Everything is a project is another aphorism that we use. And I want to learn how to tap dance.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And my husband and I have taken up fencing about 4 years ago, so I want to get much better at that.
Oh, wow.
But I do feel like I need to take a moment to not culminate, but I think of it as maybe like the comma in the sentence.
Yeah.
See what's next.
Yeah.
Refocus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't very clear, but I appreciate your question.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think even just the first part of your answer about just kind of defining the carrot, I found such a great way to think about it. And I just loved this whole conversation. I find your work and the way you think about your work incredibly inspiring and refreshing. And I'm glad that we got to do this. So thank you for being on the podcast.
Good. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Like I said, it's perfect timing because I can make visual what I can't put into words, but I love trying to go back and forth and think.
Yeah. Good. That's what this podcast is for. So I'm glad it worked for both of us. This episode was recorded on December 16th, 2019. Our theme music is by Andy Borgasani. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Surface Podcast. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and at scratchingthesurface.fm. Thanks for listening.